Jakub Bażela-Federowicz is an experienced Scrum Master, workshop lead, conference speaker, and it's also not his first Agile Swarming appearance. But he shares his learnings and experience also on other events. And if you have participated in last year Agile by Example conference, you might have learned during his talk where he was sharing a story about the transformation within a transformation. What I liked about this story, it was not that it's not that you have to burn all the bridges behind you when you're searching for agility. It's never this or that. So that's why I'm very happy to, well, I'm looking forward to this sequel of the story.
Thank you, Veronica. Oh, I can hear that you are also able to hear me. It's like on Microsoft Teams. Muted, unmuted. The video that Veronica mentioned is on YouTube. The name is, if I'm not mistaken, how we exchanged SAFe in favor of different approaches, how we dismantled SAFe in favor of different approaches. So that was like part 1. If you would like to see that, Google this up. But today, I am going to tell you the story about, let's say, part 2, what happened in the team that I'm helping to be more agile. And before I will start, before I introduce myself, etc., I just have to admit that I am extremely lazy man, sometimes. So me, waking up today at 4 a.m., getting into the train and coming from Warsaw to Krakow, that was not me being lazy, but me coming here in the first place was actually lazy, because they promised me that everything that I'm going to tell today is going to be recorded, which means that the story that I'm retelling in my company like once per week in the last half a year will finally be recorded. And every time somebody is approaching me asking this question, okay, Kuba, how did your team did that? I can just point them to the YouTube video. That would be brilliant. So I'm very glad that I have this opportunity. I am indeed a Scrum Master without a Scrum team currently. So looks like, yeah, I don't know the English word for that. The Greek one would probably be oxymoron. So something which is, defying itself. And I would like to tell you the story of how my team went from misshapen Scrum to reliable, or at least more reliable Kanban that we are using right now. I work for a Danish company in Warsaw, and as a Scrum Master, because that's my official role, I'm helping 2 teams. Those teams are equally half Polish, half Danish, so that's nice. And we share the same product owner, and we share the same line manager. And obviously they share me as their agile guy there. And before I start, a small disclaimer, I have nothing against Scrum. Scrum is cool, it's useful. When applied in the right environment, it can do miracles. Been there, done that. So every time I will be talking about Kanban today, please do not treat that as something which is against Scrum. So something that you can choose either Scrum or Kanban. And I know that there are a lot of practices here, the people who are practicing agility in many different forms. So I see you nodding already. That ease my nerves a little bit. But I'm going to discuss what sort of challenges my team had. Actually, both of my teams, but I will be mostly focusing on one of them. And those are my current teams. So those people are currently at work right now once I'm on stage. And just for you to understand a little bit of the environment, I'm working for a Danish company, which is actually like a big software house for a group of 16 Danish banks. At some point of their existence, they decided that it's actually better to have one like IT company working for all of them. So once we are building something, we are building for all 16. You can imagine how much of difficult decisions that impose on them. Once they are trying to build something, they just have to convince everybody else in the group to do so. So in that environment, if you've seen my Agile by Example talk, I started the company that was January 2021 as a Scrum Master in a very safe Scaled Agile Framework environment. We dismantled that over the course of the year 2021, actually. And obviously, this Scrum understood by safe was quite weird because we were kinda there. Small team, product owner, sprints, all the events, also additional safe events, safe roles, and all this department that we were a part of. There were people who were doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, exactly as my team. So that was quite weird because there was not a single product that we were scaling, but actually there were a lot of different services. Some of them were very close to each other, some of them not really. And obviously my teams were taking care a bit of both, of those who were somehow connected and those of somebody should have taken care of them. So that was us. So as a Scrum team, we, at November 2021, we used to have a few problems. First of all, both of my teams, they didn't have an actual single product. We were taking care of 16 different services, systems, maybe little products, call them as you like, but they were not constituting a one single product. We are mostly doing some small tools for the bank advisors. For example, to have the overview of the calendar for the bank advisor. When they have some meetings with the customers, this kind of stuff, or something else, or something that is connecting to the Danish taxation office, for example. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, as you can see. So we have 16 different business contexts, even if our stakeholders, our users were mostly the same. Secondly, once we have 16 different business objectives, that almost always led to multi-goals in our sprints. Because what was important? To this in system A, to this that in system B, etc., etc. So when everything is important, nothing is really important. But that was our reality. 3 to 5 sprint goals per sprint. The third thing, and a little bit of spoiler, that hasn't changed much. Our release procedure was based on a third party because mostly because of the separation of duties, we were able to make changes in our products, but not in every product we are allowed to touch the production. That's pretty obvious if you're working for a bank. So once we build something, we have to ask somebody else to release that. That's a huge external dependency. So the feedback loops that normally would be a part of sprint, they weren't aligned with what we were doing. Because once we finished something in a sprint, then we were not even putting the ribbon on top of that. We were just putting that into the box, and that box was sent to somebody else, and somebody else was packing that box, putting that ribbon on top, and delivering to our customers. Pretty complicated. So as you can see, to get the actual feedback at the end of the sprint for what we have just built was not possible because the customers, they weren't able to see that. Somebody else had to release that. Sometimes we just wait like for 2 weeks, for example, or we just have to, be crystal clear about the release date in that external party calendar. So feedback loops were messed up. And the final of the biggest challenges that we used to have was that with 16 different systems, and they are COBOL systems, for example, so quite old, but well maintained. But we still were getting some incidents, bugs, some problems of customers clicking not exactly the button that they should click, causing some errors, or just sending us a lot of inquiries. Okay, can I do this? Can I do that? So a lot of problems that we couldn't have planned because they were just popping up with different intensity, obviously. So every time we tried to freeze a little bit of that work and try to focus on this, there was something else appearing within that sprint. So you can understand our frustration. You have to do 5 important things and also everything else that is popping up because there are some service level agreements with the banks that we have to meet because we want to be somebody reliable, of course. The banks should, especially the banks should have trust because we are also putting our trust in them. So as a Scrum Master of those two teams, I'm at this point treating them as one because those problems were actually equal in both teams. So to even give you a better proof, what you are seeing right there, those are product backlog items added or removed into some of the sprints in 2021, 2022. This percentage means that if there's 100%, it does not mean that we haven't added or removed. It just means that if we started with, let's say, 11 PBIs, then we delivered 11 PBIs. But as you can see, more or less of 153, 164% of change, which means a lot of things were added to the sprint, mostly in terms of the incidents, bugs, this kind of stuff, every sprint. So it was nowhere but near of reliability. And we, under our skin, felt that maybe Scrum, in a way as my company understood that, in a way that helps to empirically develop one product, is probably not the best option for us. And we still have no idea how to nicely manage those incidental work. Because every time somebody started to be focused on something, there were bunks knocking on our doors telling, hey, this is important, that's important, this is important, blah, 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 blah. You know this, probably. Especially if you're working very close to the customer, you know how many of different questions, inquiries you are getting. So there was a pressing need for finding the new way, whatever that new way would be. And we had a lot of brainstorms about, okay, how we should be working. Maybe we should improve something in our Scrum. Maybe we should, I don't know, change the length of the sprint. Maybe we should do our, I don't know, meetings or events differently. Maybe we should adjust our definition of done completely different. Maybe we should have our customers more involved in our reviews. There were so many ideas that we were obviously testing and validating, falsifying every now and then. But still, there was a level of stressing out and frustrating the teams that, no, we need something completely new. And I couldn't stress this even more than I'm doing it right now, because as most of you know, Scrum and Kanban, they can work nicely together. Why we haven't decided to do so was that both of my teams, they were really tired of what they understood as Scrum. So the change of vocabulary, the change of approach, the change of method, even if there were a lot of similarities, was needed to just establish like, okay, thick red line, that's the past, that's the future, that's what we are going to do. So that was another spoiler, but the spoiler was already in the title of the presentation, that we were started to thinking about, okay, maybe we should work in the Kanban way. And I've checked the State of Kanban report, which was the last year. So even later than we started doing our Kanban journey, what are the main reasons for the teams all around the world to actually use the Kanban practices? The first one, improved visibility of the workflow. The second, increased speed of delivery. And the third, improved predictability. Funny enough, those were 3 reasons why we have switched to Kanban, even before I've read that report. These were our needs that we were trying to meet as both of my teams, even before that report came out. So I'm glad that our problems were not that different that the whole part of the world that is doing Kanban. So having this in mind, I probably should ask myself, what do I understand as Kanban? My first exposure to Scrum was in 2012, so I'm probably kind of old in terms of industry. And obviously, I had some Kanban trainings over the course of those 10 years being a Scrum Master. I had some knowledge. I probably didn't have a certification at the time of PSK. But nevertheless, there were a lot of different sources trying to explain what Kanban is. All of them that you can see here, David J. Anderson, Kanban Condensed, Scrum.org Kanban Guide for Scrum Teams, Kanban Pocket Guide by Dave Vacanti and his colleagues, and obviously the Kanban Guide, also Dan Vacanti and his colleagues. All of those are very good sources, and they were free. They were in English, which is very important if you're working in a Polish-Danish environment when English is the main language. And they were easily digestible, I might say. So that was very easy to just grab those things, show them to my team, read them, or just read some parts of them, compare this knowledge. That's what we did. But we were still struggling to say, okay, those are the books, but what that Kanban would really be for us. Lots of my colleagues obviously use the term framework, method, approach. And I'm not a language Nazi, so I'm not correcting them anymore. But for me, Kanban is a strategy. And this is, by the way, obviously the quote from the Kanban guide. A strategy for optimizing the flow of value. That value for my teams would be serving our customers quickly and with consistent quality of either bug fixing or answering their problems. And the process that we will be utilizing will be visual and pull-based. With our Scrum Jira setup, nothing was visual, and there was a lot of push-based development there. So that would be quite a Copernican revolution that we went from push to pull. So obviously, we had some very early misconceptions about how the Kanban will look like. The first hooray from my teams would be no sprints. And I was like, no, there are still some feedback loops that will have, no sprints. Hooray, Kuba, you're a genius. I felt a little bit like Brian in Left for Brian. I'm not the Messiah. Yeah, only the true Messiah could say that. The second thing, no user stories, which was true-ish. It was true-ish because in Jira we went to tasks because that was easier for us to utilize all the statuses that we were allowed to use because they have the relation many-to-many. So we're able to build the board in a way that we would like it to look like, not how the Scrum imposes on us with some statuses connected to Scrum project. So at that point, my team members, my colleagues were right. No user stories as Jira issues, because they're right now task-based issues. But obviously, user stories have nothing to do with Scrum. You can use them whenever you like, in every context you like. So from time to time, obviously, we are still using user stories. The first thing was that, in Scrum, you have so many meetings. Your team is saying that in Scrum, you have so many meetings, you're probably doing something wrong. I probably should look deeply into my life of Scrum Master if they thought that. But in Kanban, there are cadences. There are feedback loops still. How they feel that there's less meetings, I don't know, but I'm glad that they feel like this. And obviously, Kanban is also sometimes falsely connected to the promise of faster delivery. Yes, but actually by doing less work in parallel, Kanban is not promising that. Kanban is helping you to achieve that by visualizing, by a little bit work in progress, but many other practices connected to Kanban. But you still have to do the work. There's nothing magical around that. So those early misconceptions obviously have to be validated. As a Scrum Master, and by the way, I'm still using that title. My contract says I'm a Scrum Master, even if I'm being called Master of the Board sometimes, or a Kanban guy. But obviously, I started to educate my teams in terms of, okay, what this Kanban will really look like. And once we decided, okay, let's give it a try, especially about some, after some games, this kind of stuff, we had this final question. Okay, go, no go. Where would be the value of Kanban for us if it's not no sprints, no user stories, no estimations, something like that, yeah? So I decided to introduce system thinking approach to introducing Kanban, popularly known as static. Static is a method that I'm not going to talk a lot about today, but I'm really, recommending you to Google that, what static is. But long story short, that was a method combined with a very nice canvas that helped us to identify how the work flows through our system, which is team with a certain skill set. And that allowed us to already build some conclusions, even without starting Kanban ways of work, Kanban board, etc., to identify, okay, where the work starts, where it comes from, for whom we are building that things, for whom we are delivering value, and obviously through which channels. So how often those people are waiting for something, how long we can wait before we'll start working on something, this kind of stuff. Static was very helpful. I highly recommend this approach. And after a few static sessions with my teams, we actually came up with 3 conclusions. The first conclusion was that, okay, we have a lot of services. and it's not going to change. Because we are not allowed to say, we are not servicing that system anymore. Because somebody's paying for this. So we are doing our job and we are professionals. We can still treat those 16 systems as some mini products, but not all of them are important equally. So we introduced a Kanban approach of classes of service. Like, when you're in the airplane, first class, business class, economic class, this kind of stuff. Yeah, we are all flying the same airplane, but obviously those different types of work are being served differently. Some of the work right now, immediately, because there's fire on production. Some of the work, okay, ask again in a week. This kind of stuff. So not everything, we realize not everything is equally important. So we can manage those things based on some different rules. We call them policies in Kanban. Yeah, so those different things can have different policies, how we approach them. And also we are communicating. If something like this appears, obviously we are dropping everything, doing it right now. Those things can wait. Those things can wait even longer. Those are just ideas. Maybe we will take care of them, maybe not. We'll see. The second conclusion was that, yeah, we suck at planning. Even within a sprint, we're never able to plan a sprint in a way that we would be satisfied with, especially because of those lots of incidents that were happening. So sometimes at the second or the third day, we would probably need to replan. And also, with 5 goals, you know the drill. But we can forecast. And by the way, our estimates in story points, yeah. I even tried to see how much time we are spending on story point. Everything between a day and 2 weeks is one story point. That kind of estimating wasn't our thing. But we realized due to static that, of course, probably we are not good at providing plans. But based on some statistics, we are able to provide some ranges and communicate them to our customers. Okay, for that kind of work, you probably need to wait up to a week. Oh, for that kind of work, up to a month. Would you still like to order this? And the third conclusion was that our development process has to be in line with that third party. Screw sprints. What is important for us is the release calendar of the third party. Because without them, we are not able to deliver any value. Because it will be here on our local environment, period. So with those 3 conclusions in mind, we started a complete reshaping of our work in the team. By the way, the team was still more or less the same as in terms of people and skill sets. There was still the product owner. We haven't removed that role. And there was still me, the Scrum Master in the Kanban. So first of all, we completely reshaped our Jira. We introduced the classes of service. We built the board according to what we have discovered in static. And as you can see, we are still sometimes breaking the limits of work in progress, for example. Yeah, this red here blinking is saying, okay, there's too much work open at once. It's not like we are not doing that anymore, but we are painfully aware of this right now because we have a tool to come and say it to our faces. The second thing was that we started to very much limit our work in progress. And by the way, that was a struggle. We used to have 16 things open at once. And now you, Kuba, are forcing us to have 9? We thought you were a genius. But after almost a year of limiting work in progress, I was obviously doing a lot of metrics. And this is average lead time of one of my teams. Lead time is the time before the task is created till it's done working on production. So this is the entire time our customers wait for that to be delivered. 140 days on average a year ago, 41 today. Those are the data from 2 weeks before today. Yeah, so they're 2 weeks old. But it's probably, in terms of quarters, it's not that big deal. But I also was looking, okay, but what about the percentiles? So half of our work, when we can expect it to be done? Because we are limiting, because we are not opening everything at once, the percentile is lower and lower and lower. For half of the work to be done here, we waited 50 days. For half of the work to be done today, we waited 10 days. 85th percentile works more or less the same. 85% of work when it's being done. So actually limiting work in progress allows us, according to Little's law, to work actually faster by doing fewer things at once. The first thing that we did was that we actively managed the flow. So we started to look into, okay, how often something is being categorized as, small work, long-term work. And as you can see, we haven't removed finishing something after a year. It's still here. Yeah, but it's rare because most of our work is done here within the range of the 16 days, actually. Yeah. And cycle time is the time when we're actually touching the work. So only within the sphere of influence of my team. Most of the work, 2 days, and we are ready. The rest of this waiting time is actually, somebody else to respond to us, a tax authority to give us some regulations, etc., or just waiting for that third party to release. The fourth thing, we prepared some explicit, so clear rules, explicit policies. We introduced the limit of work in progress. We know when to move work to the next column. We have some classes of service, this kind of stuff. And obviously, it's changing. We are working on that. Sometimes we are forgetting about our own rules. That's still happening. But actually, we have like a clear guideline. Okay, that kind of work goes there. This kind of work goes there. So improving the transparency, increasing the transparency. Feedback loops, the fifth general practice of Kanban, looks a little bit overwhelming, I know. In Scrum, that was easy. There was a loop. Everything was happening within a sprint. Actually, Kanban is not imposing any feedback loops. It says, start with what you have right now. And my team actually ended up with having a daily Kanban meeting, up to 15 minutes, walk the board. And they, every second week, have a review. When they are going through everything it's done, when we are looking at the metrics, when we are making some decisions about, okay, what would be probably the next big thing that we are going to do. And from time to time, we are replenishing our board. So once we decide, okay, there's nothing else to do, what next things we are going to pull into the board based on the promises of the expectancy of our customers, etc. And we improve collaboratively, evolve experimentally. We allowed ourselves to have a little bit of fun with our Kanban. We allowed ourselves to have a little bit of experimentation and a lot of failures. And that's all right, because we are able to recover. If something is not working anymore, we will stop. We'll do something else. That's completely all right, because we cannot use the argument, oh, but Scrum says something. Oh, but Safe says something. This Kanban thing belongs to us only. And that's beautiful, I think. It's nothing against Scrum or Safe. Just a reminder, yeah? But this is a change of how my teams think about their system of work. So, handled problems since November. We still have 16 systems. They haven't disappeared, but we have better means to manage them right now. And not all of them require equal love from our side. Secondly, we don't have goals because we don't have sprints, that's all right. But it's more clear for us which direction we should go. For example, we are also limiting the amount of work in progress, so we are not going to work on 5 things at the same time. That's not happening anymore. We still have a long release process based on third party. Probably we won't do anything about that. That's completely outside of our sphere of influence. Feedback loop is finally connected to the release, because once it's released, this is when we are getting the feedback. And we are not, finishing the stories because it's the end of the sprint and it will look nice in the Jira metrics. No, it's not happening anymore. And even if there is an influx of incidents, we have the policies to handle them within a week. So we don't feel overwhelmed anymore. And that's a good thing. Everything is visible. About every piece of work, we can make an informed decision. But Kanban requires discipline, a lot of discipline. I would say that probably maybe more than Scrum. And this is a hard truth. And even if I would probably ask today my team about many different aspects of Kanban, they would probably say, we don't know, classes of service, I don't remember that term. Is it this expedite thing, maybe? Yeah, so I know. It requires a lot of knowledge, probably more than Scrum. But still, I would do the same. If that was November 2021, I would do the same. maybe I would do something differently, because the topic of this conference is the agile that went badly. So first of all, I would probably introduce measurements from day one, because for almost half a year, we have not a good measurement system, and we were more or less blind. I would do that from the day one, once again. Secondly, I would convince my colleagues to limit the work in progress from day one, because first of all, we just introduced it to some of the columns, and guess what? The work still was piling up in the bottlenecks of our system. And I wouldn't be creating new events or renaming them. If there was a sprint review, I would probably leave it and even not change the name, nothing like that. If there was a sprint planning, I'd probably call it planning, and that would be enough. Because we also experimented a lot about when those meetings should be happening, how long, who should be invited, etc. So probably that was too much of a change that was my sin as a Scrum Master. I imposed that change on the team, and that backfired. Sorry if you are listening to that at the recording later. So, team's reflection, if I ask them today, and those are actually quotes from the survey that I'm doing continuously with my team, is that they're much more happier with Kanban than they used to be with Scrum. And that's a good thing. I can also see that in metrics, that they're doing better once they were doing this okayish at best Scrum, or Scrum-ish thing. That was the legacy of our old safe approach. So I'm glad that they decided to make this leap of faith and go into Kanban world. And it's not saying that it will be forever. Maybe there will be a point when they will, for example, get an actual product, like one single product, when they would decide, okay, Scrum in this way would be probably better for us. Or they would come up with something else. Maybe they would combine Scrum and Kanban and something else in their processes. I couldn't be more happy if that will happen. But to be honest, I found Kanban very difficult to explain to my teams, much more difficult than Scrum. So if you would like to go to tinyurl.com/Kanban condensed, this is the presentation will be shared, but under that link, when I was explaining Kanban to my teams, I was building on the go like a mind map about different things, mostly based on the Essential Kanban Condensed by David J. Anderson. So if you don't need or don't want to read the book, but actually use the mind map, feel free. I couldn't be more happy. So actually, a good thing that I might say is that our teams inspired some other colleagues in our company. And thanks to Aga Ucińska, another Scrum Master in BC Poland, this is a photo, or she allowed me to use that. This is a photo of her team who heard about us. They invited me for some talks, and they prepared their own Kanban system because they realized Scrum is also not for what we are doing. We need a different approach, and they succeeded. Maybe we also can. I couldn't be more proud that they are experimenting and they are open-minded to use something else than they know. Because Scrum was like the default in our company. Everybody knows or thought that they know Scrum. That was something completely different that people actually needed put some effort to learn about. So I'm glad that they're feel inspired and that they're experimenting. And I hope that they will succeed even more than my teams succeeded. Obviously, it's not like unicorns running around a beautiful fairy tale landscape. We still have a lot of problems, challenges. We are still learning. But the message from me as a part of this Agile Gone Bad, the topic of the conference, is that if your Agile is going bad, try something else. With the Agile spirit, inspect, adapt, experiment, try new things. Scrum is not the only method. It's very good, but it's not the only one. And maybe, exactly as in the case of my teams, it wasn't just the best tool for what we were doing. So if you have any other questions, I would be glad to answer them, but I think that my time is running over. So if you would like to find me, I'm Jakub Bażela-Federowicz on LinkedIn. So that's probably the easiest way to reach out to me. And that was a pleasure. And thank you very much for the organizers to giving me the opportunity to record that. So right now, I will be sending the YouTube video to everybody else. Thank you very much.